Russell Westbrook went to the coaching staff and said, bring me off the bench. I think it'll work better. Now, let me say this, Rob. I think it's a fantastic gesture by Russell Westbrook. I'm very impressed at his selflessness. I will throw this out there. I don't believe it, but I think some people will. And who knows? Maybe it's a part of it. But, it could be a preemptive move, right? Seeing the writing on the wall. I'm going to get benched in a week or so anyway. Let me get out in front of it, or I'm going to be the scapegoat like I was with the Lakers. Let me get out in front of it. Maybe, but even if that's the case, which I don't necessarily think it is, at least not fully, it's still a very sacrificial move, I think. And props to Russell Westbrook for, Rob, I was saying it, I imagine I said it on our show because I know I've said it elsewhere. One of them's going to have to step back. One of them is going to have to say, you know what, I'm stepping back. I'm not going to score as many points as I could or dish out as many assists or dribble the ball as much as I could or normally do. And props to Westbrook for being the one to do this. And I'm going to say this quickly, Rob, before you go. Russell Westbrook, if you look at his career, Rob, and we know he's going to be iconic in my view, because of the triple-double seasons, and he's just been a great player in general. But I think a lot of people have viewed him as selfish, Rob, because of his game. His game, he's not, a Magic Johnson. He doesn't have the great court vision of a Jason Kidd or of many of the all-time great point guards. He is just a spectacle and a wonderkind. Like, he is incredibly athletic in a league full of incredibly athletic guys. Like he stands out among them, and his game is like willpower, athleticism. He's not incredibly skilled, but he is just a force. And I think because of that, and he hasn't obviously won a championship, people have thought he's selfish. But I think that has to be reevaluated. If you look at him in Oklahoma City, when Durant left, he stayed. He remained loyal. He wanted to build something there. They traded him. He went to Houston. He willingly accepts the second role to Harden and plays off the ball. He goes to Washington. They're not a good team, but he was actually really good there. Averaged a triple-double, led them to make the playoffs. And then he goes to the Lakers, Rob. He wasn't good there. It wasn't a fit. We all could see that. You and I talked about that way before it happened.
But Chris, remember before the trade, right? We were like, this doesn't match.
Yeah, and we weren't. That's not special. I mean, my goodness, you had to be. Right. I don't know how you could think it was going to work, but yes, he was bad there. He wasn't a fit, but it was too much put on him. You know what I mean? Like, it was all his fault. Everybody blamed Westbrook. He was the problem. And he's benched. Doesn't say a word, right? He never made a peep about being the scapegoat, unfair treatment, being benched, all of that. He just did it. He goes to the Clippers, plays his role, carries them in the playoffs to a couple of single-game victories, and takes $3 million. He's making $3.8 million this year.
He's made a lot of money now. Let's not.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that's still up. There are a lot of guys that to take that type of drop in pay will really be bruised by it. And he's been fine and he's played hard. And now he's saying, I will be the one to go to the bench. So I just think people need to reevaluate. His game is certainly an individualistic game. But I think when you look at him with his teammates and his teams, Rob, I think the guy's been unselfish in his personality.
Yeah, but in this case, Chris, I think you're giving him more due than he deserves. Because I do believe that he was going to be the one to be benched, and this is just preemptive so that it doesn't look bad for you. And he's been like going through this later in his career where he's not a main guy, where he was blamed with the Lakers, where he was released, and then picked up. Like when these things start happening, when you're making $3 million, they went and got James Harden. He was already there. If they didn't need James Harden, if they were good without James Harden, they wouldn't have gotten him. He was already there. So when you see all those things happening, you just realize where you fit in. And I'm not knocking him. I think it is admirable, Chris, but this was going to happen anyway. It wasn't going to be James Harden who was going to the bench. It was going to be Westbrook. So I think that it could have been one or two things, that he honestly went there knowing that the writing's on the wall, right, or the Clippers were going to, or had a conversation with him that they think that this is best.
Well, I think at least the reports are that he initiated.
Well, that's
but you're right. It may have been coming.
It may have been coming.
I actually believe that he initiated.
Do you know?
And I also think it was probably coming.
But it was coming, and he's not blind. Like, you don't go get James Harden and then have him sit on come off the bench. It just doesn't. That doesn't make. What'd you get him for? So I think he knew it, and so
I think it was coming.
And I'm not mad at him, Chris. I'm not mad at him. That it's just the way you want the story to read. This reads way better than Russ getting dumped on again. And remember, as good as he is as a team, and I'm not knocking his previous stuff, he's been on 5 or 6 teams in the last 5 or 6 years. Like let's not. He's been all over the place. So at some point, you don't want to keep.
There are a lot of players like that.
No, but I'm just saying of his caliber.
Shaq.
He won
Dwight Howard.
He was with 5 or 6
Allen
teams.
Iverson. Shaq played with 6 teams, I believe.
Well, I just say, like,
Allen Iverson. Pierce jumped around a little bit. In
his case, it just feels like he's always being the one that's being dumped. That's just
if you keep playing. Look at Chris Paul. If you keep playing long enough to the point where you're no longer a star, that's kind of what happens. Vince Carter, But anyway, let's get to this. Do you think this is going to work? I think this is the best chance of it working, Rob. Like, Harden, Kawhi, and Paul George, I can see that working. Harden just needs to play like he played in Brooklyn. We don't need Houston Harden. We need Brooklyn Harden, where he was great. Run the point. Try to push the pace a little more than you typically do, but make yourself the third scoring option, but get Kawhi and Paul George easy shots. And then Russ Rob with the second unit, we know he can play well with them. And so I think this is their best shot of this working.
All right, well, you ready for some analytics real quick? The Clippers' previous starting lineup, Chris, of Westbrook, Harden, Leonard, George, Zubac, had the worst ORTG of any 5-man lineup that played at least 50 minutes.
What is ORTG?
The offensive rating.
I know, I was just playing with you.
Together, this season, Chris, 90.0 with a net rating of minus 14.1. The team is 0-5 since acquiring Harden, right? And now they're 28th in the ORTG, 25th in the defensive rating, and 29th in net RTG. So it's been bad, Chris. It's been bad.
Right. We didn't have to see the numbers to know that. We just had to see 0-5. I told you they were negative 67 with Harden on the floor going into the game against Denver. I don't know what it is since then. He played well, but they lost. But, yeah, look, what do you think? You think this is going to – I think it'll work better. I think this is what had to be done to give it a chance to really work. Where you at on it?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't working, so obviously there had to be a change. And I think that this will be good for everybody. I really do. Adding Harden to those guys will be dynamic when they figure it out. And then there's no riff. They got plenty of talent on that team, and they have a tremendous coach. So I think it'll straighten itself out. And we'll look back at this. I'm not saying they're winning the NBA championship. I still like Denver coming out of the West, but I think they'll have a good season.